I'm going to switch up here.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Larissa from Solve. I was previously the Keep It Pretty Rose City program coordinator. That role just switched, but I'm still really tied in with it, and that's something I care about. So basically, Keep It Pretty Rose City is a program that's been funded by the City of Portland to give volunteers opportunities to safely clean up bits of Portland that they seem undesirable or something. So I did go out once a week with volunteers. I would take recommendations from people in the community about where to go. I would set up a time. It was always on Thursdays, right around lunch from like 11 to 1. I would meet volunteers who were interested. I'd take about 30 people every week, and we would do a cleanup. So the whole point of the program is just to allow people to take action where they see fit, but to do it in a safe way. So there's a lot of rules around cleaning up homeless camps or houseless camps. We don't want to take anything that could be a possession. So, and we're also very wary around sharps, and I'm trained to handle sharps. So it kind of gives you an opportunity to go out and take care of certain areas in a safe and legal way. So that's what I do. I love to get emails about, hey, there's a cleanup that needs to be done here. I'm fairly new to Portland. I've only been here for about a year and a half, so I'm still learning different areas, so any suggestions that come to Solve are always welcomed. Even if you can't come out to a cleanup, you can still report it, because then we have other interested groups and we can kind of point them in the right direction. So see Solve as a resource to kind of take action to clean up certain areas. We really like to emphasize along waterways because we are an environmental nonprofit, so preventing any sort of water pollution is something we like to focus on, but we also do cleanups anywhere. So yeah, solveoregon.org. If you ever wanted to do a bigger cleanup, so I do the cleanups that I go out personally on Thursdays. There's also the opportunity, if you guys wanted to lead your own cleanup, that can also happen. So we can train you up as like a Solve volunteer leader. We can train you in how to handle sharps. We also take the sharps containers from you afterwards. And we make you a web page. We give you all the cleanup supplies you need. And then we do recruitment on your behalf. So posting to different websites, reaching out to the community colleges and Portland State, volunteermatch.com. We promote people's events. So everyone in this room has the ability, if you guys have an eyesore that you can think of right now, to create an event, and then we'll help plug volunteers to your event and kind of help you along the way. So that's kind of what Solve's all about. I don't really know what else to say. But yeah, feel free to call us at any time and just tell us over the phone, or we have a litter report form on our website. We're also really in tune with like disposal services, Metro, PDX One Point of Contact. We can kind of help guide you, basically. So we're here to help, and I hope you use us sometime.
Soon.
Do you have anyone that does water testing?
No, we do not have anyone who does water testing. We do work with like Western Environmental Services, but we don't have
Are you thinking for the creek?
anything like that. Yeah, we do a lot of cleanups around creeks. I know that Char mentioned doing one along Johnson Creek, and we're very close with the Johnson Creek Watershed Council. They do a huge cleanup in August that everyone is welcome to do. But if you guys want to do a midsummer one in June, then let's hook that up and make that happen. We'd love to have two. Why not?
So can I ask a question about that? So if we were to pursue that, now do you guys, if it's cleaning up around a houseless camp, do you guys go in prior? Do you know who goes in prior to?
No. Yes.
How do we do this?
Good question. It's a kind of a staunch policy, and it doesn't leave a lot of people room, but I personally say like 50 feet away from anything that could be a houseless camp. Anything that's farther off from that, 50, because we're just a nonprofit, and we like to do cleanups, but we're not really well equipped to do houseless sweeps. Like that's just not really our ball game at all. So I know that can be really frustrating to people, but it's just the way it is, you know? So people can be like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, we clean up the sidewalks to make sure you can still walk safely, or clean up along creeks so things don't get washed away.
Or the alleyway.
Or the alleyways, yeah. We like to do, if there's a certain area that's been reported multiple times, I'll go out to my supervisor and we'll kind of look around and then we'll deem it. Is this totally abandoned? Is this something that we can clean up? Or is this something that's questionable? And even if there's like a one red flag of it still could be someone's stuff, then I'm sorry, we like can't. Question?
Do you cut blackberry bushes?
We do. So that's a whole other side of things. Yeah, so I'm just like the litter person, litter lady. It's great. But my coworker, she does blackberry removal, ivy removal. We have tons and tons of shovels, buckets, and loppers that we can loan out to help you with your own event. So
I'm talking about the end of the alley, adjacent to the back of my property.
oh yeah,
The Henry Woodstock Court Alley.
okay.
The Foster end of it, garbage strewn inside the blackberries, and I'm not going down there because it's where a lot of people dump their garbage. But I raked from about 50 feet from Foster all the way to Woodstock. I raked the whole entire alley. Picked up and had, who was that,
Rapid.
Rapid
Right.
response come out, and they
Yeah.
picked up all the bags and the barrels of stuff that I picked up. So I did that,
Yeah.
but the other end is just garbage strewn in the blackberries, and I wasn't going there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're getting, and it's time for them to grow.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't want them to grow anymore. We do blackberry removal.
That'd be
Absolutely.
great. So I should just, you have cards.
Yep, I do have cards. I'll give you one, but once again, our website is saltoregon.org,
Okay.
and you can contact anybody on there. We're only
Okay.
10 people full time, so like it will get
I'll go
funneled
there.
fairly quickly. Yeah, I'll give you a card too. Yeah, we also do like native tree plantings and shrub plantings. But if you ever have an idea for that, like you have to give us some sort of time, because Portland Parks and Rec has a very set schedule on where things can be planted, and it's all complicated with zones and.
Residential as well, on people's property.
No. Nope. It's only public lands. Yeah. We work with a lot of like friends groups, like Friends of Baltimore Woods. They've had this idea for this like natural corridor that's really just blackberry bushes, but they've been ongoing with this project and they've kept with it, and they've removed all the blackberry, and now they're in the like planting phase of that natural corridor. So that's kind of a good example. Any other questions? Well, thank you for having me.
What's the turnaround time for once you call, make a request?
It totally depends on the type of project. Litter is the fastest. Unless it's like an area that we think could be, that we might have to schedule a site visit for. You know, if you want to do like a neighborhood cleanup and it's a casual, like picking up some litter as you go and not just a dump site, then that is really fast. But if there's like a dump site, you know, that can easily be out of our jurisdiction. So before we even begin that process, a site visit needs to happen, and we don't have that much time, but we try to make it happen. Like we do make it happen. It's just not as quick as the turnaround time. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So if you do a large project that might end up with 50, 100 bags of trash, how do you guys deal with that at the end usually?
So we don't take care of disposal, unfortunately, but we can kind of tell you like, oh, I see that there's like a Whole Foods around you, and like a lot of Whole Foods will let you dump your litter in their dumpster if you say that you're doing a litter cleanup. We can also, we give out $200 small grants on occasion, occasionally also for disposal, but that usually is for like buying plants. Yeah, and then also if it's in a park, we can ask the parks people if we can like leave it in the park and then they'll come by. That's the most common, is if people do a litter cleanup and it ends up in a park or starts in a park and it goes around the perimeter, we just have parks come and get it. Yeah.
Like what if it's ODOT property or something like that, do you still?
ODOT property, that like quickly becomes a safety issue, but if we think it can be done safely, then we'll contact ODOT and we have to get their land permission before going forward. And that's always kind of a crapshoot, especially with ODOT. It's really hard to get a hold of the right person. As
You're saying in the choir.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Solve kind of started as a neighborhood cleanup, small nonprofit to bring community together. And now Portland has such a big litter issue that we're kind of going through this growing pain of like, how do we effectively handle it, but legally, responsibly, and safely. So,
Is this the same group that does the coast, does the beaches?
yes, we just did our big beach cleanup.
Right,
Yeah,
I've done that several times.
great. Yeah, it's great. And then we have Earth Day coming up. Busy times at the office.
You can
Yeah.
stay busy full time in Lents.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've been trying, that's kind of been one of my goals with Keep It Pretty, is a lot of the people who do these regular cleanups are from like areas that honestly don't really need them. So having a staff-led person going out, I've tried to target areas that don't get the attention otherwise. So that's definitely a conversation we're having, and I'm hoping to see it come to fruition. Yeah, absolutely.
Are you one of the 10 full-time
Yes.
folks there? Okay.
Yeah, yep, and I was the Keep It Pretty Rose City program coordinator. I'm now shifting my way over to communications, but we all kind of wear like 10 hats, so I can still help you. Nice hat. Yeah, so it'll either be myself or Monica. Monica's worked with Char before. I've only been at Sol for about 8 months. She's been there for 5 years. So she really knows like the ins and outs and how to handle different requests efficiently. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming to the April Lents Neighborhood Livability Association meeting. I even spit that out right this week. So our first guest speaker was Larissa Gordon, and we're going to follow up with Tammy Meyer, who's the Senior Program Manager of the pilot program for the police body cam. And before we do that, though, I just have a few little announcements. We have a neighbor-to-neighbor community event coming up this Saturday, April 13th. We meet here at 8:15 for breakfast, and then we disperse out to the different care receivers that we're going to be helping. The LNLA has their West Rock cleanup, which is a weekly event. This Sunday, April 14th at 10 a.m. It's around 101st and Foster at West Rock site. And for the rest of the month, then it'll be Saturday. And then this Sunday, we have the VFW breakfast at 9:30 a.m. at
21st.
Or 21st, 21st.
Yeah.
It's
Not-
Easter
not
morning, Easter Sunday.
Easter Sunday. Some of us will be there.
Yes, we will.
They'll be there in body, not mind.
And there's a West Rock permit hearing coming up April 24th at 6 p.m. at Waddles.
And I got a call today, and they encourage everyone to show up. It's regarding their permitting process. Yes, and he said, please encourage people.
And then we got a call from the Unlimited Choices. Brenda called and said they still have extra money to spread around in Lents. If you know of anyone that will qualify for their program, give her a call or have that person call her, and we have a number of it.
And that's on what program?
Unlimited.
Well, that's the one where they come in and make their house more accessible.
Right.
Okay, it's wheelchair accessibility and so on.
Yeah.
They'll do safety things though too, because they're doing Betty's, and I think Renee signed up to do it. So,
And then it's
It's not a
getting a new
safety
floor
issue, it's
and a
because
new
my floor
toilet
is
and
yeah,
walk-in
out
shower.
next to my
Yeah.
toilet, and I don't want to
They're
land on my
doing Betty's
driveway.
whole bathroom.
yeah.
That, yes, that,
Oh, they do safety related things as well as.
Well, that's what it is. It's
I
to
told her, I
make sure
said,
you
I'm not
can age
disabled, I
place.
just
Grab
old.
bars.
Yeah,
Because I got accepted for the PDC grant.
oh, the, uh-huh,
Further, so they sent me a note in January that they have 40 grand set aside for my house,
okay.
but they won't be there till June or July because they're so backed up. They
It's
had-
it's on this thing, though, the number's on that you can call her and see
Yeah,
if you can get in.
I think they have the same issue that there's a time lag.
Well, there is a time lag, yeah,
But they-
but if
but they
Betty's
have-
already getting her.
Well, she said they just can't hire.
No, they haven't
Oh.
They don't have the
started
budget to hire
last
the
week and
inspectors.
made a plan.
Okay. Okay.
Cindy?
Question, tell me about West Rock, still kind of new to this. What, I mean, I remember the big fire, that's all I know. It's a recycling,
One of many fires.
yeah, okay. It's a recycling area, right?
Right.
Right,
Where all the cans go?
yeah, it's just down at the bottom of the hill,
Yeah.
that Foster, between 100th and 101st.
Oh,
And what do they want to permit for?
They're now being ruled by Metro, they've never had a Metro permit.
Okay.
So Metro's now involved because they want to expand their facility.
Uh-huh.
But Renee knows all about it, she is the expert on West Rock.
She lives right across the street from me. And Renee has lived there since before West Rock came to the area.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We're of the opinion they should be shut down and moved out
Right.
because they don't belong in a residential
Right, that's
area.
well, see, it was zoning, it was, and they're gonna be there.
Yeah,
But anyway, it was zoning, this half of the street is
Oh, yeah.
industrial,
Oh, yeah.
commercial.
They're doing that
industrial,
everywhere,
and
Renee.
Residential, and
And
it's the
it's-
only one that West Rock owns in the world that is in a neighborhood.
So what is the permit, what kind of permits are they applying for this time?
Same one.
Same
They
one,
want
to
their 5-year,
continue
they want their
operating.
5-year license, but they're on a probation thing for 6 months until they get input from the community to see what we think about how they're doing, how well they're doing, and,
I take it they're not good neighbors.
No,
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 Not if you
Not
have
at
to
all.
deal with their trash.
Right, exactly. So-
yeah. So come to the hearing,
Yeah.
please, please.
We need the
please,
support.
We need all the support.
We need
yes,
bodies.
And
we
yeah.
need bodies,
We need
yeah.
bodies.
This
And
has
to
been
just-
an ongoing fight since 1993. My son and I he lives next door to me, and we have done the majority of the fighting, like I told Metro.
and you've done a magnificent job.
You
Oh,
have.
well, I don't know, I think if
Oh,
I had
yeah.
done a magnificent job, they'd have been down the road.
Oh, you're making headway.
We don't want to
have
come
enough
visit you on
power.
Sundays, okay?
What's that?
I said, we don't want to come visit you on
Yeah.
Sundays.
Oh, gosh, I'm telling you what, I told Will I don't want to have to.
And what is Waddles? Is Waddles a restaurant?
No, Wallace is a boys club.
Oh.
Girls and
Oh,
boys club.
okay, okay,
It's
okay.
the Boys and Girls Club on Carroll.
I
Harold.
should have said that.
But yes, there is a Waddles down by Jansen Beach.
Okay.
It used to be a restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had D's in it.
Yeah.
That's a WAD, isn't that W-A-D-D?
Okay, so let's-
W-A-T-T.
Let's move on now and
Thank
let
you.
Tammy Meyer do her presentation for us.
Hello, everyone. Brief intro, I'm Tammy Mayer. I've been with the Bureau about 3.5-ish years. Kim is one of my helpers, my teammates, and she's been with the Bureau 24-ish years. We actually run the Regent system, which is the reports management system, records management system. And I was tasked with taking on this program back in November as we start to spin it up. So we're going to go through some slides today. We're going to do it a little different than I did in the other community meetings because we're not going to ask your opinion on the policy piece because we've already pretty much written the policy at this point. But I'll tell you what we went through and kind of what some of the other community comments were. Some definitions: body-worn camera, BWC, DOJ is Department of Justice, RFP is the request for proposal, and CAD is the CAD system, our computer-aided dispatch that the officers use. So in 2013, a national survey of police agencies went out. 500 police agencies found that less than 25% actually were using body-worn cameras at that time. They started coming about 2010-ish. In 2014, after the shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, President Obama started a grant program for $23 million, and it's carried over up till now. We're actually in the process of writing a grant to ask for some money to help move this project along. Washington, D.C., New York, and L.A., some of the biggest cities in the U.S., were some of the first agencies to jump on that grant program and get moving with body-worn cameras. In 2015, another survey went out nationwide, found that 88% of American citizens, just the standard population, support the use of body-worn cameras in police departments. From 2016 to 2018, more agencies started jumping on board with it, and they did some local surveys, some local level research concentrating on their programs. Not a lot. There's only been 70 or so, not only in the US, but worldwide, that have really done any research on body-worn cameras. So there really needs to be a lot more, and we're going to include that in our program as well. We actually started looking at them in 2014. We did some community feedback early 2015. The Portland City Council actually voted for a budget for this program, $1.6 million. Back in 2016-17 adopted budget. But we weren't ready. We wanted to do some more research. We wanted to watch other agencies, kind of how they were going to do it, see what kind of policies came out, so we decided to wait. We've decided to move on now because Oregon actually has passed some legislation that covers body-worn cameras. And we'll cover these as we go through the process, but it talks about notification, records release, information gathering, and activation of the cameras. There were a lot of advantages, actually, to not going first. We could learn some lessons from the trials and tribulations that the other agencies went through as they were kind of adopting this brand new technology. So there were some lessons learned. There's some new standardized equipment out there, talking about focal length of the camera and battery life and stuff like that. That's become more standardized. We did a lot of research on articles and studies to see what people considered and what kind of things they did in enacting these programs. And we also got a lot of recommendations from like the ACLU, local agencies like Cop Watch, things like that. So a lot of recommendations out there about how to use them. Some of the other agencies that are already in the process of using them, Beaverton and Portland State University already have the cameras. They've had them for a couple of years, and they've been moving forward. Oregon State Police, Hillsborough Police, and Washington County Sheriff's Office are in the implementation phase, or the pilot phase, I should say. They're testing out a couple cameras, trying to decide which ones they want to choose. So we are a little far behind from some of the other agencies, but then some of the bigger agencies will just have a bigger step up on us. Some of the goals for this project are to strengthen the community and trust through the recording of the videos, to promote officer safety and safeguard the rights of both the community members and the officers themselves, increase the transparency and accountability of the Police Bureau, enhance the complaint resolution, and improve quality and reliability of the investigations for criminal prosecution, and then also to help us improve our training, because we're always looking to improve. Like I mentioned before, we've actually got a research partner that we met with, Western Oregon University. We're working out the details on the agreement right now, but they're going to be doing our survey. We're going to do a survey both of the officers and of the community members. If you want to be on that survey, I'll tell you about our website at the end, and you can sign up to be on the survey. But we're going to ask questions of kind of like perceptions of both your feelings of the Police Bureau and of cameras and a bunch of other things. Ask some different questions of the officers, what they think. Are they looking forward to them? Are they completely terrified of getting these things? And then we're going to do this a couple times during the process and see if anything changes, the perceptions change. We're also going to be doing some performance measures and try and measure, is there a cost benefit to having these? Does it reduce complaints? Does it reduce use of force? And a bunch of other things that the researchers are trying to decide what they're going to use as performance measures. So we're working with them to do research as we go through this process. This timeline is completely shot, so pay no attention to it. We got held up at the city council. So we did the policy discussions January through mid-March with the community members, and then we started drafting the policy, and that's currently going through internally before we start going to the union and to our stakeholders group, and then out for public comment before it goes to city council. We were supposed to do a report to city council and ask permission to proceed with this project and release the RFP, but the mayor was concerned that the other committee members, council members, were going to vote no before it even got off the ground. So he put a kibosh on putting it out there and wanted to spend some more time explaining to them what we're trying to do. Hopefully we'll get the first survey out and get some of that data back so we can explain to the city council that I think the majority of the community members are looking forward to these cameras. So hopefully we'll get some background. I plan to re-attack that around July-ish, depending on what the mayor says. So this whole schedule is blown. Once we have permission, we will release the RFP, which is basically the specs that we ask for from the vendor. Things like, we want a camera that will has a battery life of at least 10 hours and can record for up to 8, because the shifts for the police officers are 10. So things like that, focal length, how far you can drop it from like a 6 foot where it won't break, weather resistance, a lot of specs. Once we get that back, we will grade those, and then we'll bring all the vendors in and allow the officers, whoever wants to come in and handle all the cameras, ask questions of the vendors, things like that. From there, we will grade those and we'll pick our top 2, which will move into a pilot phase. And we're going to pilot them at Central Precinct because it's already hardwired for all the IT specifications, and this is a very IT-centric technological device because it requires the uploading of all this video at the end of shift. So we're doing it at Central, and we're also going to pilot it at Traffic because we want to test the durability, and those guys are on motorcycles all day. They'll be out in all weather. So not sure when the pilot will start. I had planned it for summer through the end of the year, and that's not going to happen. So after the pilot, we will determine which vendor we like, and then we will move to full implementation. That will take about 7 to 8 months. So that's the timeline. So where do we start? When I was given this project, Kim and I started looking at policies of other police agencies, both locally and nationally. And we actually concentrated on other police agencies that are under a DOJ settlement agreement. It was not required of us to get these cameras from the settlement agreement, but it was recommended by one of the judges. So we concentrated on those agencies, and I've listed them here: Baltimore, Albuquerque, Oakland, New Orleans, Seattle, Newark, Cleveland, Ferguson, East Haven, and Chicago. So we looked at the similarities between them, the differences, and what kind of were the trends going through the policies. The goal for those sessions, not today really, was to capture feedback on what community members actually wanted to see in those policies. There are four laws that deal with things that are pretty much already laid out on how we will deal with it. The first one is notification. Officers, when they arrive on scene and hit that record button, are supposed to announce to everyone that, hey, I am recording this. We haven't figured out the wording, but it'll be something like that. Unless it's an unreasonable time to do that. If they jump out of the car and they just start chasing someone, they're not going to yell after them while they're running, hey, by the way, I'm recording you! Not going to happen. So at a time when it becomes convenient, after they have them on the ground and handcuffed, hey, by the way, you were being recorded during all that. So that is a mandatory notification set in Oregon law. Retention is another Oregon law. It says we will keep every single one of those videos for a minimum 180 days. And that's any video that we take. If it is, the maximum depends on the statute of limitations for the crime, but up to 30 months if it's not related or it's not going to court. So we will start deleting those at that time. Then we have release. Prior to any recording being released publicly, not to the DA or not, to the defense attorney, stuff like that. But if it's being released publicly to the news or whatnot, all faces in the videos must be blurred, and that includes the community member and the officers themselves. Videos can only be released publicly when it's in the public's interest. Don't ask me who decides what's in the public's interest. That's not up to me to decide, but I'm assuming it will be something along how we release police reports. Between the records manager, the DA, and the chief of police will make a decision somewhere in there on which ones will get released. Obviously, the ones that garner more attention in the news, an officer-involved shooting, an in-custody death, things like that, those will most likely be released. However, if there is a grand jury on that case, it will probably wait till after the grand jury, just because we don't want to taint the grand jury. And then the last law dealing with body-worn cameras is use during public demonstrations, and this is a long one. So no law enforcement agency may collect or maintain information about the political, religious, social views, associations, activities, or individual groups, associations, organizations, cooperations, businesses, or partnerships, unless such information directly relates to an investigation of criminal activities and there are reasonable grounds to suspect the subject or the information is or may be involved in criminal conduct. So what does that mean? If we are at a Antifa protest, because that never happens, downtown, and if the officers are just standing there monitoring the crowd, the camera should not be recording. However, should Mr. Antifa decide to light up a Molotov cocktail and toss it in a police car, then they can go, oh, something's about to go down, and they can hit the record. So they're not supposed to record just someone's right to protest, but if there is criminal conduct about to occur or currently occurring, they can turn that on. That's basically what that one says. So some of the other things, there were 6 other topics that we found as trends in the policies as we went through them. And these are what we talked to the other communities about. Mandatory activation. So this one has a law that says the camera will be set to record continuously, beginning when the officer develops reasonable suspicion or probable cause to believe a crime or violation has occurred, is occurring, or will occur, and the officer begins to make contact with the person suspected of committing the offense. So they get a CAD call, and they drive out to wherever the burglary is. When they step out of the car and they begin to walk up to the house to make contact with either maybe the person that called in the burglary, or if it was a neighbor that said, hey, we saw someone climb through the window, they're on vacation, that's when they turn it on before they enter the scene. Most of the other agencies had it in their wording that they would activate it at the beginning of an incident, call for service, or self-initiated, and continue recording until the event has concluded. And they included things like traffic stops, searches, arrests, field interviews, DUIs, domestic violence calls, encounters that could turn confrontational, operation of emergency vehicle lights, turning on the lights and sirens, and custodial transports when they transport someone to jail. So that's what the majority said, some way, shape, or form of that. There were also some others that kind of called out some specifics that we thought were interesting. In Albuquerque, if someone is not complying with the officer's commands and appearing to pose a threat to self or others, Oakland said, during the assessment or evaluation for psychiatric detention. New Orleans said all advisement and Miranda rights. I really like that one. We wrote that one into our policy too. Newark, motor vehicle safety checkpoints, aiding motorists or pedestrians. Cleveland, citations or accident scenes where video can help document what has occurred. Ferguson, suspicious vehicles, seizure of evidence. And East Haven, resolve or prevent a dispute, self-initiated calls where LE action can reasonably be anticipated or a motorist assist. So at this point, we basically asked the community, well, what do you think we should put in ours? Or any of those you like, or any you hate? And we basically got feedback. It ran all over the spectrum, depending on what the person's views were. But it was fairly consistent with it will begin it when they receive a call or they self-initiate. And then there were some that called out like picking up evidence should always be recorded. And there were some were like, well, why do you need to record that? Some people said, well, so we can see that the officer didn't plant the evidence. Okay. The conversation ran quite the gamut, depending on the views. So that was the first one. The second one is prohibited activation. When should the officer not turn it on? And this one, the Oregon law provides exceptions based on reasonable privacy concerns, exigent circumstances, or safety of officers and other persons. And then it also had a little caveat, recordings are for law enforcement purposes only. Legitimate law enforcement purposes. So the majority say reasonable expectation of privacy such as a private residence, restrooms, locker rooms, hospitals, treatment facilities, non-duty related personal activities, interactions with confidential informants, and private conversations and administrative activities among department personnel. So if an officer is responding to a private residence to take a report on a stolen bicycle, probably doesn't need to be recorded. If they are invited in, if there's no crime being committed, then they probably shouldn't be recording in a private residence because you have a reasonable expectation of privacy in your own home. Now, all bets are off if there is a domestic assault going on and they're responding to that hot call. That record will be on and your privacy is pretty much out the window because they are the mandatory activation trumps the prohibited activation. Some outliers. Baltimore says sexual assault victim interviews, strip searches, court proceedings, and within 500 feet of a bomb scene. You should not have the camera on. And people look like that when I say within a bomb scene, and that's because the radio frequencies can interfere possibly. If there is a device, it's like officers turn off their handheld radios too within a certain distance, so they don't interfere with a possible device. Albuquerque turns them off at DUI checkpoints. That also is an interference issue. The Intoxilizer 5000, which they have, can be interfered with radio signals. So they don't want to interfere with that, so they turn them off. Newark, on break when engaged in police union business disciplinary proceedings. And Cleveland, entertainment venues that may have prohibitions against recording. So you can't just, if they're working overtime at the Blazers game, they can't make their own little personal copy of the Blazers game while they're standing there watching.
Some sort of snapshot.
Now, if they see something going down at the Blazers game, then they should be turning it on.
Well, that's not
So, deactivation. The majority of the other policies say at the full conclusion of the event or encounter or incident where the member has left the scene and anticipates no further involvement in the event and has completed transport of a civilian or arrestee, or when a higher ranking member tells them to turn it off. So if they're at a huge traffic accident and they are now relegated to stand on the corner of 82nd and crosses 82nd. Foster. And they're just standing there telling people you cannot turn down this way. They probably don't need to have that on. Newark, where the member is actively engaged in collecting physical evidence, so they turn it off for physical evidence, which I found interesting. And then Oakland, discussing administrative, tactical, or law enforcement sensitive information away from the community member involved in the event. So those were kind of some of the deactivation thoughts. Discretionary or temporary deactivation. This is where discretionary, where they give the officer basically the call if they're going to turn it off. And Seattle says natural death scenes, death notifications, cultural or religious objections, but they must state on the video why they are turning it off. We wrote that into our policy too. I really like that one. New Orleans, if an officer believes it would impede or limit the cooperation of a victim or witness during investigative contact, I can't talk today, must get permission from a supervisor. And then for temporary, Oakland, in between interviews, will turn it off and then back on so they can have an individual file for one interview instead of if they were on scene for 4 hours, 1 4-hour long video. So they kind of chunk it up. Interesting. Seattle, if a person with legal standing denies permission to record in a private residence where no crime is in progress. And then Newark, when requested by a community member where it reasonably appears that the person will not provide information or otherwise cooperate unless it's turned off. A lot of ones that came out of this were, can the community member ask them to turn it off, or can they ask them to turn it on? So we put that in the discretionary as well. as long as it does not violate the mandatory activation. If a community member asks you to turn it off because they're giving you, they were the victim of a bias crime, and it was very traumatic for them and they don't want to be on camera. Okay, so we wrote some of those things in. Officer review. This was the most controversial one. When can officers review the video? Can they review it prior to writing a report? Or can they never review it? And there's really only three choices. Either they can read it or review it before a report, they can never review it, or they can review it after they write an initial report and then do a supplemental report. So that was really the three choices going in. The majority of them allow officers to view recordings for routine reports to help with assisting quality and accuracy of the reports. The review of after a critical incident really varies. So there's, if they responded to a burglary or a theft or something else, that's what we call a routine. For a critical incident, it's once again an officer-involved shooting, a serious use of force, or in custody death. Those are really the three. Those are the three, right? There aren't any others that are considered critical. So those are the ones. And some agencies split the difference. They identified routine reports and then they identified critical reports separately. And some just said they either have access or they don't, and it doesn't matter what kind of report. So Baltimore and Albuquerque did not address the distinction between. They did say that review is allowed prior to investigatory interviews. Oakland said once interviewed, the investigator will show the member their video and audio, and they're given the opportunity to provide a supplemental statement. New Orleans permitted to review their own body-worn camera, but not any other officer that was on scene, prior to giving a recorded statement or completing a report. Cleveland, the agency reserves the right to limit or restrict based on the circumstances surrounding the incident. And then Ferguson, officers shall not be questioned about the critical incidents before giving an opportunity to review the recordings, including use of force or accident causing injuries. So those all kind of ran the gamut. The discussion on this question was very heated in many of our meetings. I'll just
I
leave
have a
it there.
question.
Yeah.
When you're wearing the camera, is there like a red button so you know you're being recorded?
Yes.
Okay.
The majority of the cameras have a light. The cameras, once they start duty, the camera is on. All they have to do is hit the record button. And there is an indicator light to let you know if it's recording. I think it's actually green versus red. The interesting thing on the cameras is the majority of them nowadays, they have advanced so far that as soon as you push the button, the camera will go back 30 seconds in time. It can actually be longer than that. And capture the video but not the audio of that 30 seconds before they actually hit the button because the camera was on. So it has some interesting capabilities. The last policy question we asked is about supervisor review. When can supervisors use the video to review? Can they use it for misconduct complaints, investigations, resolutions, compliance with policy? Do they have to do random reviews? These ones kind of ran the gamut too. Baltimore supervisors are restricted from viewing any video without cause. New Orleans shall not be used to conduct administrative investigations without approval of the superintendent. East Haven supervisors shall review all recordings of incidents involving injuries to prisoners or an officer, use of force, vehicle pursuits, or misconduct complaints. And Ferguson, for the purposes of training, performance reviews, critiques, early intervention, inquiries, civil claims, and administrative inquiries. There were a couple policies that actually mandated supervisors will review one video from each person they supervise per cycle. So the cycle could be 4 days, could be a week, whatever their cycle was. But a lot of supervisors can have up to 8 officers, and if they pick a video that's an hour long, you know, and they have 8 officers, that's 8 hours of video they have to review. That takes them off the street for 8 hours because that's what they're doing. So that one is a little more difficult. A lot of questions came up about, well, what if they see something in the video about that the officer didn't catch when they were on scene. So if they're there responding to a domestic, and they're dealing with a domestic and they didn't see the drugs over in the corner, but the supervisor saw it during review of the video later, can they go back and prosecute that person for the drugs? I left that one to the DA. That's not for my call. But the DA was actually at the discussion that day when that one came up, so I thought that was pretty funny. But a lot of other questions about supervisor review. A lot of this rotated about, well, why are the supervisors checking up on them? The officers are going to feel like they aren't trusted, or if the supervisor doesn't like an officer, he's going to be fishing for information on that one officer so he can write him up for something. So this one kind of had some interesting discussions as well. That's the end of the policy questions. You guys have any other questions about the cameras themselves and the project that we've got going on?
I have a question. How likely do you think it is?
This is where I get myself into trouble.
I know.
For speaking my mind.
That's right, speak your mind. This will actually get approved.
I was super hopeful in the beginning. After doing all the work that I put into this, because it's been a lot of hours, we've done, I think, 20 community meetings now, and open forum town halls, and a lot of late nights, and working on the weekends and stuff. It was very disheartening to be ready to go to city council and have it canceled the week before to find out that 4 of the 5 votes were going to be a no.
Yeah.
What is city council logic? That's a silly thing. What's their logic?
Objection.
Honey, you can't ask her about.
Well, I know, because I asked that exact same question. One individual did not like the fact that the police bureau was going to be in charge of the videos. They thought it should be some outside agency, but it can't be because there are a lot of CJIS requirements and other things. But had a concern that we were going to control the videos and we would be editing in them and deleting them and making them only look positive for the officers. Which in the system, all these systems, you can narrow the permission so the officers can turn it on and off and record, but they cannot. They can view if we give them permission, but they cannot. They will not have any editing permissions or deletion permissions. It is strictly controlled to a few. It'll be myself, Kim, and a couple other people on the records team that will control those kind of things.
So Tammy, they don't trust you.
The one individual does not trust the police department.
Oh, I know
that.
I know that.
2 of the other individuals, I'll let you figure out who that was on your own. 2 of the other individuals were concerned about the cost. It's 1.6 million, and they have their own bureaus that they run, and they want that 1.6 million for their pet projects and their
After
bureaus.
all the money they bullshit down the road, they're sorry.
No, I'm with you. It is an expensive technology, and we don't actually know if 1.6 million is going to cut it. The pilot would let us know if that was sufficient. In that 1.6 million, there are 5 people. Myself, 1 IT person, and then 3 records people to do the redaction piece. 3 records people is not going to be enough. I'm telling you right now, we are so far behind on redacting police reports for public release. I don't know what the wait is nowadays, but it's long. That 3 people that have to watch, 8 hours of video to redact it, because one of those critical incidents is going to be a lot of video. And it's going to be like video for 8 hours for 8 different officers that were on scene. So it's going to take a lot of work if 3 people just isn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
Well, can you bump the budget to hire more people?
We would have to ask city council, and city council's not willing to give us money at this time. We have a lot of other projects going on, and we have asked for some money for this next fiscal year and have basically been told find it internally. It's in the process. The budget,
Okay.
we'll know in June. But
Okay.
I have zero hopes that anything else on our budget will get funded. The other project that I'm running is the replacement of the reports management system, because the system we have is awesome, right, guys? Yeah. We have a lot of problems with the vendors. The majority of our partners have dropped out, and that bill has been put now back on Portland, so we are paying over $1 million more than we were 2 years ago annually for this program because the other partners have bailed out. Now, yes, we've only been in this program 3.5 years. It was the best option at the time. There are other options available now. And the project manager that drafted the governance that governed this 41 agency project wrote Portland into some things that have come around and bit them in the ass since. Basically, the big thing is there was no penalty for agencies leaving, and the bill came back on Portland for every single one of those agencies leaving. So we have asked for money to start researching and get us a new system when this one, the contract for this one dies in July of 2021, and we're pretty sure they're not going to give us any money. So
that's a 1.5 years of work to build it.
Yeah.
We either find the money internally, which is what we're striving to do now, or we live with what we've got. And the looks on these guys' faces, I don't do that.
We're trying. Really.
Yeah, we're trying.
We appreciate
There's some good stuff.
So the money issue, I mean, the city had like the biggest revenue last year, but yet they still took 5% out of everyone's budget. So I don't know where all the money's going. I know this is expensive.
We can take you to several addresses and show you.
This technology is expensive technology. The other thing that we're hoping to do with our pilot project, and we're going to be able to answer a lot of questions just doing a pilot. One, what's the workload on our officers, right? Because they're downloading the video and tagging the video. So when the video gets downloaded, we know where it was and what case it was.
What case it is.
So it puts a workload to these folks. And then there's a workload to records.
They're already overworked.
Exactly.
And we're 90 officers short or something right now.
We want the simplest software possible. Then it puts, of course, work on the records. But also, we stop and think, okay, well, it's affecting the police. Guess what? There's a downstream. What about our DAs?
Yeah. They're not happy about this either, because they're going to have to hire more.
We wanted the pilot piece of this to assess that workload and the cost. And get a real picture of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Well, if they let us hire more police officers.
Well, we have 120 vacancies right now. It's the problem of hiring them and getting them through the background process.
Nobody wants to work for Portland.
Do we have the budget to
We
pay
fight for,
120?
yes, we do.
We do.
Well,
Which is one of the things, I might steal some of that money that's not being used and use it to fund our new RMS. That's my plan. I'm trying to convince fiscal of that.
Do we
but
try to recruit out of others?
They're recruiting out of us. Our process takes longer than any other process in the state. So while they're going through our process, they've also applied to OSP in Washington County and Salem, and they're getting through their process and getting hired quicker than we can get them through ours.
And they're nicer places to work.
And we're working on it.
And they don't have to deal with the
Background.
protests and a lot of things that are specific to Portland that these guys are challenged with every
And a
day.
mayor and city council that doesn't like them.
So what I'm hearing is cameras are for kind of like reporting purposes, for either as adjunct to the police report or as evidence later on.
But it can also be used to hold the officers accountable if they're saying racially biased things to you on the street.
Right.
If they are incorrectly using force, which is why we have the DOJ here, is because we were told we were using too much force against the mentally ill. So it will be used for prosecution as well,
Right.
but the main goal of it is to show that 99% of the officers are doing the right thing and are good people,
And
to catch those 1% that are not.
how do you guys feel about them? Are you yay or nay or?
Yes. For the most part, most of us want them. And I think there is a pendulum shift. The group that initially screamed and yelled and wanted them have decided that they don't, because other agencies in other states that have adopted these programs, the videos are showing, number one, that what we're doing is good, and that the behavior of the people who are eventually pushing us into the situations where we're using force. And so they wanted our misdeeds documented on
Right.
video,
Right.
but it turned out to be the opposite 99% of the time, so they went, okay, no, we don't want that.
And one very vocal person in these community members said that these videos should only be used against the police.
Yes.
They should not be used
Yeah.
for prosecution. Well, that's not the way evidence works. If we've got it, it's fair game to whoever's doing it
But
wrong.
what I meant about it is if it's going to be used evidentiary, then you
Yes.
have to have this string of ownership. You have to
There's
know.
a chain of
Well, there's
custody.
chain of
Correct.
custody, yes.
Yes,
And what I,
and retention.
why wouldn't they let the officers review them? Because when you're in the moment of the moment, you might not remember everything.
Exactly.
So why wouldn't they?
Well, and the
let-
officers have a notepad specifically for that reason, to jot down notes, because by the time they get done, end of shift, they responded to, I don't know, 8, 9 calls.
Yeah,
And they didn't have
but
time to write 8 or 9
Yeah.
reports, so they might be writing that report the next shift.
But
if it
they're
wasn't a critical
jumping
incident.
fences and running here and running there, how the hell
Yeah.
are they gonna remember?
There's a lot
Oh
of,
wait, I gotta write a note.
there's a lot of pros and cons to reviewing the video. On the opposite side, a lot of the comments were, well, if the community member can't review the video prior to making a statement, why should the officer be allowed? I mean, a lot of those kind of things. So a lot of people saw it different ways. And there is some evidence about not allowing the officers to review it following a critical incident, because when you write that first initial report, you want to know what the mindset was of the officer before they drew their weapon, and what was going through their head about what their thoughts were of the scene and the suspect and all that. And if you allow them to watch the video, it could change that initial perception. So
What's
There's a lot of
the
difference.
digest version? What's the average cost of one camera?
about $1,500 per camera.
That's all?
Because it includes the camera, the clip or whatever for the
Right.
uniform, the downloading dock, all the equipment. About $1,500 per camera, roughly.
FLIR.
What about if they made a GoFundMe?
I don't know. I don't think any of them were.
No, the big thing about having a camera, one of the things
the
that
labor.
they're trying to do is make sure that it gets a view like a natural eye would.
Yes.
Right.
So that you're seeing like a person would. So you're not getting things that a normal human being wouldn't see.
So they're not going to be looking at this thing along through the day, like rerunning it and say, what?
They could if they have a break, because they have to tag those videos. They have to say this was a burglary case number XXX,
Oh, they have to
so
mark
we
it.
can find
Yeah,
it
they have to mark it.
later. So they're going to have to tag each of the video clips.
Every time they turn it on and off, they're going to have to do something to identify.
To identify, correct.
Okay.
Or they
Because
can do
we're
it at
not
the end of
there.
the day.
Right.
That could turn.
Well, these officers are gonna need
That could be,
Yes.
that's
to hire
concerning.
someone.
Well, some of them have a smartphone app where you can do it on the app. So it connects to the thing, you can say that last video was this, and put it all in, populate your metadata, and be done with it. So it depends on if they have time to do it after each call, or if they're jumping from one call to the next, and then they have to wait till the end of shift, because those cameras have to be docked at the end of shift so they can upload to the cloud and so they can charge. So that part is going to have to be done the same day. Unlike waiting for a report, some of them can wait till the next shift to be
So
ready.
this would necessitate one camera per officer as opposed to one camera per shift.
One camera
Because-
per officer.
The next shift coming in would
Yep.
have to have.
The
a
patrol officers
fully
are
charged-
all going to be assigned their own cameras. The detectives and those that don't work the street on a day-to-day basis, we will have a bank of cameras for them for when they go out to serve warrants or do whatever detectives do.
Grab it on the door.
They will grab it, they won't be
exactly.
assigned to
Grab
them,
it,
but they will grab it, they will use it.
Put your
for
little
that.
arrow to out.
This one's been checked out by John.
So we aren't going to get, we are authorized 995, I think, sworn right now. We're not going to get 995 cameras. We're probably going to get around 550, maybe 600 to cover the officers on the street, a bank for detectives,
Banks
a bank
and
for
backup.
some of the other specialty units like the RRT for when they go out and do stuff.
Contingents
And
for
then
breakage.
some contingencies, like 10% hold in reserve, so we can swap out broken ones and stuff like that.
I just can't see them. They're gonna need help. They're gonna have to hire some recorder Rebecca or somebody to help them with these things. Because it's just it's gonna
It's
put,
me and my team. taking it on.
But they're gonna be in charge of downloading their own cameras.
Yes,
Yes.
well, to download it, they basically take it off and they dock it.
Dock it.
As soon as they dock it, it just
Yeah.
does its
And
thing.
how long does that take?
Usually about 4 hours. That, we ask for no more than 4 hours in our RFP.
Okay.
Some of them might take longer, but we ask
So
for
they're not
no.
taking this camera home with them?
No. Well, there are some officers that go straight from home to a scene, and they will have to we'll have to figure that out, because that's a whole nother thing that's gonna take a lot of extra
You have
work.
lots of time to figure all that out.
Yeah, I've got a nice little pause.
Unfortunately.
And well, the good thing about the pause is we are working with our researchers and we can start collecting that data, so when we do end up going to city council, we can say,
They'll be ready.
here's what the first survey said.
Officers and citizens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we might have a little more firepower to go.
City council has the final vote on
Yes.
this? Oh,
Yes.
that is.
Because it's, the cost is over $1 million. Anything over $1 million when you go out for a request for a proposal has to go through city council. We are in the process of writing the grant because there's grant money out there, which I have to have done by, I think, mid-May.
Yes.
They will match the funds. They'll give us up to $2,000 per camera for the officers we're going to deploy, but Portland has to match that money, which that's all right. We've got that written in our
Right.
budget. I'm going to use that a little too as kind of a push for city council is let's at least get through the pilot
If it's just
and
a
see if we
money
can gather the
issue,
data.
they're okay with you doing it if it's not their money? Is that what I'm?
No, because the city has to match the money from the
Right.
grant.
Yeah.
So they will still have to approve it. The city council has to approve us going for a grant too. So we have
Oh,
to
you're
ask permission to
kidding.
go for a grant,
Oh, my.
and then if we get the grant, we have to ask permission to use the money. So I have to go before city council 2 more times for this project. I love city council, it's fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
And they're gonna report it
looking
in.
at possibly using live streaming rather than a
And this-
recorded format?
Some of them do have live streaming, they all record, but some of them do have the ability for supervisors to watch or inside the
So if you're doing tactical,
command post, for them to watch what's going on scene through a live stream feed.
Is that
Not all of them
cameras
have it,
you're gonna get?
We don't know, we need to do the RFP and test the cameras and.
Because
do
a
the
streaming camera is a whole different thing procedurally as well as one that's not.
For the everyday patrol officer, streaming cameras, no, but we might
Yeah.
have them for our tactical situations. I don't think that they're going to be, you're
Depends
going to
on
have a
the-
streaming, yeah, it depends. It really does depend on the vendor. I mean, that, we haven't picked that yet, we haven't got there.
I will say one other thing on the budget piece. Another reason city council is concerned about the cost of the program is because the very little research that has been done, there is really no cost-benefit analysis that proves that these are worth the investment. Now, when I was doing research, I called every single agency in Oregon that has these things, and I want to say that's like 23 agencies, and asked them, have you considered dumping these cameras because of the cost? One said yes, and he said, we'll never do it. So that is a question, because it was brought up to me that one city in Texas, I think they said Houston, was looking at getting rid of the cameras. I called Houston, and I'm like, no, we're not. So I think it was rumor, but there really is no cost benefit analysis that says these things
save
are
money.
worth the investment.
Yeah.
But to the officers,
Oh,
who
yeah.
it gets them out of a complaint,
Yeah.
it's worth it to them.
Yeah.
I think the evidentiary value, and if it does find a rotten apple on the force, I think that's worth it too. I would think that the money we could save in just civil litigation
Right, yeah.
would pay for 1.6 million. But I talked to the city attorney and she says there's no real way to track that.
So
Yeah.
are the millions of dollars that they spend sweeping the homeless worth it? Is that a good investment?
No.
That's not my project, so
I know. I know that, just.
Different way.
different way.
So I have a quick question. So with comparable cities or comparable amount of cameras that Portland would get, after it's all installed and you guys have all the hardware and everything set up, what is like an annual cost to maintain that with like IT and stuff? Is there like a
Well, the budget's
estimate?
1.6 million annually because
Okay.
there's 5 bodies associated with it and the cost of support and maintenance from the vendor. Is that enough? Is it too much? I don't know. We won't know until we do a pilot and kind of,
And see the
I honestly
difference.
think 3 records people to do the redaction. We need at least 5. minimum, I think, just based on the workload of what Public Records does today for regular reports. The support and maintenance, I don't know. I don't know what the vendors' costs are and how much those are annually.
Do they store it or do we store the data?
The majority of them are on the cloud, so it would be cloud storage controlled by us, but it would be either Microsoft or Amazon Cloud, because they're both now certified in the state for CGIS compliance.
Yeah.
Other questions? All right, we have some information on our website. I'm sorry I didn't bring the cards, but I can email Char the information and she can send it out. Up there we have all these slides from these meetings, the meeting minutes, the notes that we took for all these things. We did a call, put your eyeglasses on because we did a policy comparison chart. We basically took word for word out of like 50 different policies on some of these hot topics and put exactly what they say in their policies because some people wanted that. But it is an eye chart. I mean, you really got to up the thing on that Excel chart. You can give us some online feedback. There is a link to provide, if you think of something here today and want to ask a question or whatnot, or you can email us a list for an update. You can also ask to be part of the survey when it does go out. But I will ask, if you ask to be part of the survey, be prepared to be part of the survey for the next couple of years. I don't just want your information at the beginning. I want to know after we get done with the pilot, has anything changed about your thoughts? And after we get done with full implementation, if we ever get there, has anything changed about your thoughts? So I'm gonna hit you up for a couple different surveys, not just one. So if you sign up for that, be full aware of the survey.
Will we know when we have this quote city council meeting when they discuss?
Yeah, I'm gonna post that on the website as well. So I keep that fairly updated. I haven't changed it in a couple weeks because nothing's really changed in a couple weeks. And it probably won't for another month or two until we get another city council date. But you can always shoot the online feedback a question, hey, any updates? And I've emailed you back as soon as I get that. We both get those
emails. We get the
emails.
email, so you'll get a response.
But I'll send that information out to Char and she can email it out so you guys have that website.
But we try to keep all of our information flowing. I took notes from all of the meetings, so you can see the questions. That
Yeah,
other
all the
groups
questions are up
asked.
there. Everyone's, so if you want to see some of the far right and the far left comments on some of these,
They're all there.
they're all there. They're not necessarily word for word because there was a lot of comments being thrown out at the same time. But the gist of the responses are up there.
If you had to weigh the pros and cons, which way would you say the majority of the people that went to these meetings would have voted?
The community?
The community,
Probably
yes.
about 80% for.
Yeah,
Good.
I would say it's the majority is for them, although they had a lot of questions and concerns about the
And
policy.
they really wanted to see the policy, and folks
Yeah.
will get a chance, as the policy progresses, everyone will get a chance
Right.
to see it.
I was
Because
just
we go
curious,
through
because
a-
we go to these meetings and you have these people out there protesting against cops all the time, and it's like, it sounds like the city listens to them more than they do the rest of the community.
Well, they are the vocal minority.
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
It's, the city council hears them and says, oh, they don't want the cameras, when the majority of them do.
Yeah.
But city council doesn't hear them because a lot of people that are for the cameras are more apathetic and not willing to raise their voice or go to city council and talk about
I think a
their
lot of
opinion.
people work. The problem is.
Well, and that's true too. A lot of people have jobs. City council is kind of hard, you know,
Yeah.
because you got to squirrel away a while. And
Yeah.
You got to find parking downtown.
Yeah, I know, so I'm just saying that the majority of your 80% there are working
Yeah.
people and they don't have time to take off to go to.
Well, I'd say a lot of it's
Rally.
apathy too, because you went to the first
Yes,
uh,
uh-huh,
open forum town hall. There were, I want to say, 8 community members at that one.
yeah,
There were 22 at the second one, and
Uh-huh.
there were like 6 at the third one.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
I reserved a space for 150 people.
Wow.
And we just, I mean, we tried advertising. The news was at all 3 of them.
Do you put
Yeah.
like yard signs in parks and neighbors'
No, we didn't
houses
do
and all
that.
that?
No, but we tried to broadcast as
We
much as
put
we
it out to a lot of,
possibly could.
through a lot of the community groups.
Yeah, it was on our page.
Because I live across from Bloomington Park, and people put shit in the park all the time advertising this, that, the other. I mean, that's how I find out.
Well, can you guys stay a while, because I know I have a question for you guys. It's regarding the house. You probably know the address, because I have it here.
Pick a house.
No.
What's the White House?
Specific house.
Yeah, no, ask us.
Where's the policy?
Is that the one I told you about, Sarah?
That would be
It's
the
middle
one,
of the
yeah.
road, it's, right at the.
Well, not that one, that's a different one.
Mom, they probably just
And
got
that's
names
really
or
where the
something.
chief wanted it.
Well, they probably do, you can ask them the name.
At the
No,
beginning,
that's,
she was very against, you guys got it. Looking at a couple other policies, like San Francisco.
Sorry, everybody, we broke up too soon. We
Still got stuff to discuss.
we neglected to include on our agenda, we want to have a discussion.
Yeah, we're central.
We'd like to have a discussion about the cleanup.
Stuart.
I would like Stuart to just go ahead.
I'd like Denise to go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, it's her idea.
Oh.
Well, every year up here, we do a neighborhood cleanup for Lents, where we have dumpsters out here lined.
I think this is 10.
It's either 9 or 10. Yeah. For 9 years, so you guys know
Yeah,
that.
and now that we're kind of partnered up with you guys, we were actually brainstorming, transitioning from that into more of a Lents cleanup day, where we actually go out and really focus on an area and thinking about the 92nd Playbill and the creek area, and trying to make it a big enough kind of event where we draw in media to really point out how toxic that is for our waterway. Which I missed the salt piece, but I was hoping there was some discussion around that. And we're exploring water testing and then all kinds of other things to just see how bad our waterway is just down the hill, and use that as a catalyst to get maybe some action done in our area.
And it sounds like Saul would be a good partner for
Yeah,
us.
they would be, yeah.
She did talk about that we can't get within 50 feet of anything that looks like it might belong to someone, that it's a possession. Maybe you guys can give us input on that too.
Just, we could, yeah, you can't clean up near an active camp, but
Right.
ones that are abandoned, I think would be fine.
Then we
Camps
can-
go. Yeah.
Right.
Rapid would have to take care of
Yeah,
that.
no, we'll call them out first.
Yeah, so they would come out and then
Yeah, we'll call them
them
first.
join together and clean up
And
the
then,
areas.
so Rapid doesn't, they don't, I call it the fine stuff. You know, they pick up the big stuff, but all the little stuff, Shar and I go after them. and-
See, and the rule is, Rapid picks up the big stuff.
Yeah,
Central City Concern comes in and gets the little stuff. And there are issues with Central City
there
Concern
are.
fulfilling their contract, i.e. they're not.
right.
However, they can be shamed into doing harder. Because I succeeded last week in shaming David and his truck into cleaning up crap that had been sitting there for almost 2 weeks.
Good deal.
So anyway, the discussion is, do we want
Do we want to do
to try to take this on? Because I think for us, we just found out we can get vouchers again because we didn't know if the city was going to continue to issue vouchers. So we can get the dumpsters out here. So we're trying to figure it out, so I think we're going to do some more meetings, but what does the group think about taking on an adventure like this, which it would be?
Well, I guess my question is, do we want to include that with also trying to get people to bring up their carloads of stuff? Or do you think maybe with them?
I think because my mom included, they know it's coming in June, they started to store things up already.
Right.
Yes, I think if we're going to transition, and this is what we need to talk through is, I don't want to disappoint people that are expecting us to do it, but then say, this might be the last year with that, but next year, community-wise, we're going to go out and focus on an area to clean up as a group once a year.
Which kind of makes sense. I'm just looking at splitting our resources.
Yeah.
If somebody's being paid to pick it up already and they're not doing their job, then that needs to happen.
Yeah.
That's done.
Yeah, they're not volunteers.
When the
Yeah.
inmates, didn't.
I'm not gonna go do their job.
Inmates come out there.
So these dumpsters you put
The inmates can't pick it
around.
up.
Here, we put here in the parking lot, we
Oh,
get
here.
5 to 7 dumpsters. that are here in
Oh,
the
then
parking lot.
people bring their stuff here.
When we say 7 dumpsters, they're rotating through. We have a call number. The minute we get one full, we have a call and another one's coming. We've been doing it so long, we kind of know how the rotation's
And
going.
we get an exceptional volunteer base just out of the church community. So-
But this would be,
Sure.
yeah, there's a lot to think
Anyone's
about.
concerned about
Staging
solutions.
stuff down below and, people with trucks and trailers bringing up what we might be pulling out of the creek bed down here. That's what I didn't know if Saul would do
So-
or assist in that.
Working with Solid, because we've been at other cleanups that they've done, they have a volunteer base that they can pull people in from across the city.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
It's like we were down on the Springwater Trail down around Cartlandia, and there were people from all over Portland at that one. In fact, most of them were not from the area, I would say.
So we could actually help do the staging of pulling up what they're pulling out and bringing it up to the dumpsters.
I mean, if we could come up with enough bodies, I'm just concerned with losing resources here. Because we had talked last year, and I don't know if that's part of this conversation this year, but last year when we were down at, on 82nd, Teen Challenge, we were talking about actually going out with pickups and picking up for the seniors that couldn't.
We already do.
Yeah, we do that.
Yeah, the church does that.
Yeah, okay, so if you guys are doing that, and then we're adding into that with our manpower, are we still gonna have the manpower to do all of that, plus go down and?
Well, this is where if Solve is going to supply some volunteer base, and maybe Solve also supplies a container or two as well. I think this is what we need to flesh out. We don't have a lot of time because we do it the third week.
The 4th week.
Fourth week of June is when we've always done this.
Yeah, I respect. Yeah.
So when you did the Cartlandia cleanup, did it stay cleaned up? I mean, what was the net impact?
Well, I haven't been back to check, but I would say that any cleanups that we do are not going to be a permanent thing.
Sure.
So long as we have a large population of unhoused people living outdoors.
Well, do you have any sense was it better for a day, a week, a month?
But my understanding is some of the discussion has been, could we use that cleanup day to get some media attention to re-say to the city, hey, this is how bad it is.
Yeah.
It's, our neighborhoods are unsanitary, our water system is unsanitary. So it's not just a cleanup and wow, didn't we do great, but this is a purposeful.
Focusing on the wetlands area.
Nothing that we say or do is going to measure up to getting a few minutes on the evening news that shows all the garbage in Johnson Creek.
That's what they need to do, is take a little footage of that, it's horrific down there.
Oh, it's awful.
And that's just one spot along the creek.
And what about the children who live along 92nd, who have to stand out at bus stops in the middle of what we're seeing down there on 92nd.
They're walking to school.
I know
on
they
Spring
are.
Water.
They're walking there and they're
I will
standing
say
at
that
bus
it's
stops.
clean from 101st to 92nd, but I have no idea what it looks like from 92nd to 82nd.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for that.
The same with the viaduct going over.
You guys
to
look, your
Lents
neighborhood is
School,
gorgeous, by the way.
When they had all those tents there.
Well, if you're looking for media for an environmental angle, then you need, well, if Saul's to some environmental organizations, maybe through them you could pull in people interested in promoting it in that regard. Maybe even helping you figure out whether the water quality is being
Dawn?
affected. Well,
Dawn?
it probably has.
I don't want to interrupt here, but the police want to leave.
Oh.
So I just want to thank them for coming.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody lock your cars.
Thank you.
Hopefully I'll hear you all out there sometime in the next 2 or 3 months.
Yes, you will. It'll be sooner than that.
Good. And
We've,
Judy Lowe would be happy to see you all also.
We have a
Because she's got a
really,
nasty mess going on over there about half the time.
well, we have a really good new commander, and she is changing some things for the better. No, good stuff. So it should result in us being out on the ATVs again.
Good.
Like, probably not as much as we used to, but some
Hey,
still.
I'll take anything.
But it's a lot of good positive changes, so.
Somebody call me, put a note on the gate, I'll unlock the gate, I'll make cookies. Rapid response was 500 cookies last week, so.
Hey, those guys are great.
But good, I'm glad.
There's small phone calls up here if you guys are interested.
I'm not there for the day anymore, but it sure is a mess.
The information. Well,
You guys answered from the peacemaker.
Back on the road.
this was really cute. You want to cue it?
See you next week then.
That's right, okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to you, Stuart. We can go back to our solve. I just wanted to let
Well, I think
you.
we're good. We'll do a meeting next week with you guys and try to push out.
Does anyone else have any announcements? Anything else?
Please come to West Rock.
Okay, all right, there being no other business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.